welcome. I'm Sandra SG Wong, your host for today's event, a roundtable discussion called The Joy of Genre. I am the president of Sisters in Crime, an international inclusive community for all who write, read, and love crime writing, including fiction and nonfiction, thrillers, suspense, mysteries, etc. The etc. is what we're here to talk about today. Sisters in Crime is proud to be a continuing sponsor of VoucherCon, the World Mystery Convention, and today we're with you in a pre-recorded session for VoucherCon 2021, which will take place live and in person in New Orleans from August 25th through 29th. As an organization committed to equity and inclusion, Sisters in Crime is pleased to create today's event to serve the community's disparate and varied circumstances, which may include the desire or the need for virtual events accessible from one's home. As you can see from your screens, we have a beautiful full house of authors today, eager to dive into our topic. So let me begin first with gratitude. We are all on Indigenous land. I humbly and gratefully acknowledge that I am an immigrant settler on Treaty 6 territory, which includes the lands of the Cree, Dene, Nakota Sioux, Blackfoot, Ojibwe, Saulteaux, and Anishinaabe peoples. And on behalf of our roundtable guests today, whose homes include places across Canada and the United States, I also acknowledge Treaty 7 people, including the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Stoney Nakoda Nation, the Tsuut'ina Nation, and the Métis Nation Alberta Region 3, the Shawnee, Delaware, and Wyandot peoples, the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, Mississauga, and Wendake Nyanwentsio, the Tongva people, the Tuscarora and Lumbee, and the Wabakanaki Nation. So there are many, many rich Indigenous cultures for us to learn and explore where we live, and I hope you will all do that. So I'm so excited. Please allow me now to introduce our roundtable participants. As I do, I'm going to ask each of you, lovely, lovely people, to tell us what genre of crime fiction you write. So let me start. Please welcome Esme Addison, author of the Enchanted Bay mystery series from Crooked Lane Books, including A Spell for Trouble and A Hex for Danger. I love those titles, Esme. So what are the genres that you write?
Cozy mystery.
Cozy. So I do know, because there's the word spell and hex, is there some sort of paranormal aspect as well?
Yes. So my series is based on the real Polish myth of the Mermaid of Warsaw. And so the characters are descendant from a mermaid and are perceived as water witches in this little North Carolina beach community.
Oh, lovely. We were just talking about witches in the green room earlier, so that's great. Next up is Kate Carlisle, the New York Times bestselling author of the Bibliophile Mysteries and the Fixer Upper Mysteries, both from Penguin Random House, and the latter of which have been adapted for screen by Hallmark Movies. Hi, Kate. So
Hello.
Tell us what genres you write in.
It's probably clear that I write cozy mysteries. I consider them just traditional mysteries with kind of a hook attached to them.
Yeah.
And the hook is bookbinding for the bibliophiles and a woman in construction for the fixer-uppers.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Naomi Hirahara, who's an Edgar Award-winning author of several traditional mystery series and noir short stories. The series include the beloved Mass Arise series, and there's a new upcoming historical series, I believe, from Soho. Hi, Naomi.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, up to now, in terms of books that I published, they fall in the traditional, I kind of call them /cultural mysteries, as well as I've written a cozy police procedural. Yeah, there actually could be something like that. So those are the two. I've also written middle grade and nonfiction. Awesome. And I'll discuss the new directions in the future.
Great. Looking forward to it. Next up, we have Kristen Lepionka, who is a Seamus Award-winning author of the Roxanne Weary series from Minotaur. Hey, Kristen.
Hi, so glad to be here.
So do we have you to thank to rep, is it the PI genre or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I consider them private investigator mysteries. So the 4 books in my Roxanne Weary series fall under that category. My 5th book, which I'm still working on, is more of a mystery that's part police procedural and part suspense.
Okay, great. Thank you. And next, Elizabeth Little, who is an LA Times bestselling author and also the Strand Critics Award-winning author of Dear Daughter from Penguin and Pretty as a Picture from Viking. Hey, Liz.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you for being here. So what are the genres that you write in or you write and publish in?
This is actually a really hard question because I've always found it difficult to like really concisely say, you know, what subgenre I am. And it's sort of like Hitchcock meets Fleabag, right? Like a kind of weird melange. But I asked 3 of my friends this morning, I was like, what subgenre do I write? And every single one of them was like, obviously you write suspense. So I write suspense.
Okay. Great. It's always good to have outside sources and perspectives. Well, I often say that as writers, we write what we write, you know, and it's the marketing department that comes up with the labels, right? So you just highlighted that, Liz. Thank you. Next, I'd love to welcome Delia Pitts. Delia is a former diplomat and university administrator, now turned acclaimed indie author of the Ross Agency mystery series. Hey, Delia, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here. I consulted my marketing department, my husband, this morning as to what title, as to what genre he thought my mystery series fit in. And we agreed that it was a private eye mystery series for sure, contemporary. And he really liked a term I had invented several years ago, neighborhood noir. Because it is not cozy. I wouldn't say it's cozy, but it's there's an element to that it might be considered cozy. Set in a small neighborhood in the giant city of New York with an intrepid private eye. It's very noir, but has other elements as well.
Great. Oh, maybe you might think of giving your marketing department a bonus, maybe a coffee or something. That was great work.
Yes.
Okay, next I'd love to welcome Kia D. Richards, who's the author of the West Investigations series from Harlequin Intrigue. Hi, Kia.
Hi. Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course.
So I write in the romantic suspense genre, and later this year my first thriller will be coming out. My publisher refers to it as a psychological thriller / police procedural. So
Okay.
maybe crossing genres there a little bit.
Yeah, wonderful. Wow. I had done a little research on everyone. I'm just telling you all this now. And I would have chosen, it's funny, I did not know it was also, you were doing a thriller and police procedural crossover, Kia, so that's a real bonus. And I also had you pegged, Liz, that your writing was more like thriller, like psychological thriller. So, you know, it's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know, because I always just say comedy, but apparently that doesn't fly.
I would say Black comedies, definitely sprinkled in your work, Liz. Yeah.
So next I have Barbara Ross. Barbara Ross is the multiply nominated, that's a word, I've created it, multiply nominated author of the Maine Clambake Mysteries and the Jane Darrowfield Mysteries from Kensington. Hello, Barb. And is it okay if I refer to you as Barb?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome.
It is fine. I am into either. My books are cozy mysteries, and in the Jane Darrowfield mysteries, she's a professional busybody. So maybe there's a little nod to the PI genre there.
Right. I like that, professional. Maybe you can carve that out, professional busybody as a new subgenre. And of course, last but definitely not least is PJ Vernon, who has been called a rising star, quote unquote, by Library Journal. And I know that PJ has an upcoming June release which has appeared on innumerable must-read lists. And I myself have a pre-order on this book. I might take it up with Chapters Indigo because it's arriving a week after the publication date, but that's fine. I'm fine about that. Hi, PJ.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Thrilled to be here. Unlike some other folks, I did not consult anyone, and I feel like I should have, because depends on what day of the week it is. I feel like I use some of these genre labels very synonymously. So sometimes I say I write thrillers, psychological suspense, domestic noir suspense, and I'm now in love a little bit with the phrase neighborhood noir. So thank you, Delia. I think that resonated with me a little bit. So.
Go for it.
Fantastic. That'll be a new thing. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining me here today. For those in our audience, we will have author links available at the end of today's festivities, so you can pause the video and find out more about the authors here today at your leisure. Okay, so the joy of genre is our topic. Just a quick note that I am coming to this conversation and coming at this conversation as an author of a series that features a hard-boiled PI, ghosts, magic, and an alternate history setting, plus touches of noir. I say noir tinged, but that sometimes sounds not very healthy, so let's just not do that. My next book is completely separate from the series I've been writing, and it's a contemporary suspense, and it's a standalone. So for me, the thing I love about crime fiction, and I'm sure I'm not alone, is that it has myriad faces, and that's what we're here to talk about today. So let's get into some nitty gritty. I'm going to start off, kick it off with this question. And anyone just jump in. What is your favorite thing about the main genre that you write in, the main subgenre you write in? Who would like to go first? Who would like to drop this wisdom bomb for us? Esme.
So I write cozy mysteries, and one of the things that I really like about cozies are the hooks. There's culinary cozies, there's paranormal, different. So I like that if I, for example, want to read about winemaking, I can find cozies that are set in like wine country and tell you lots of good like technical information about how wine is made. If you want like Southern food, PJ and I were talking about Southern food earlier, you can find a culinary that's set in the South and it has lots of like fried chicken and biscuits and bundt cakes, and there's like, recipes at the end, things like that. So I love that about the cozy mystery genre.
Oh, that's fun. I hope everyone's already eaten lunch. Maybe getting hungry on this conversation. How about anyone? What about you, Kristen?
I love writing PI mysteries because I love that a private investigator is a professional detective, but they're not bound by the same rules that a police detective would be. So there's a lot more freedom and flexibility in terms of like the types of cases that they can investigate and the kinds of actions that they can take and places that they can go, and even ways that they can help people. So I think that is kind of it's fun because, she's still a professional, but it has a lot of freedom to kind of do whatever she wants.
I agree with Kristen. That's kind of similar. Reason that I chose a PI series. When I sat down to write, it was difficult to do the police procedural because I have a legal background, and I would always go, "Oh, you're not really supposed to do that." That's kind of illegal, but we're going to do it anyway. So it's nice when you're a PI. I mean, it's still illegal, but it's a little bit. I feel I can get away with it a little bit more than the police officer trying to do certain things.
I agree with that, and I also for the same reasons chose the PI genre or subgenre. And one thing I found that resonated very much with me was that I was setting my stories inside a community that wouldn't at all want to call first the police. That is not their first call when they have tensions or troubles or difficulties or concerns. They don't call the police first. And so it made sense to me to, in my case, create a little tiny neighborhood detective agency, 3 people only, who would fill in that gap for their neighbors and friends and enemies in the community.
And I, on the other hand, have written primarily amateur sleuths, and you really have freedom when they're amateur. And I think for me, my heart is I love writing about ordinary people, kind of people that are overlooked. And I think with amateur sleuth, especially a series, over a course of a series of books, you can really get into the mind, the experience, and the life of a person that maybe on the outside may not seem that significant. It's not part of the powerful, but you can kind of explore the underclass through amateur sleuth.
Mm-hmm. So Kate, I thought maybe you had something you wanted to say earlier about what your favorite thing is.
I was going to agree with Esme about writing cozy mysteries, because they can be educational. In fact, the first one I read, which isn't that cozy, but I consider it because it's got the hook that goes with the idea of cozy mysteries, and that was the Iditarod series, Dana Stabenow. And you just found out about Huskies and, the race and Alaska and ice and everything. And it was just fascinating. And I think with cozy mysteries also, for me, they're fast and they're fun, highly entertaining, I think. And then you learn something, you learn a little something depending on what the subject matter is.
Right, because there seems to be hundreds of really niche cozy mysteries. So if you want to learn about knitting, or I guess that's not a very small one anymore, that's pretty mainstream now.
So I have to say, as a cozy author, I really hate the hook. I have
controversy.
My books are considered culinary mysteries, which has been a challenge from the beginning, since I neither shop nor cook. And 10 books, and honestly, 10 books just ended in the 10th manuscript. It's like, oh my gosh, we have to eat again. So I'm not about the hook, but I do love things. My last book was about oyster farming, and I absolutely loved researching that.
Yeah, great.
I love her books, by the way.
Excellent. You should put that on your books now, Barb. Loved by Kate Carlisle.
I know.
Right there. What about you, Liz and PJ? What are the things, your favorite things about writing the genre you write?
Yeah, I think sorry. Do you want to go ahead?
No, I was gonna say I would like you to go first, so I could just use answers.
I mean, I for me, what I'm interested in writing, I mean, and this goes back to what you were saying, is like our genre is just kind of like the writer that we are naturally going to be anyway. And for me, what's always as interesting as the external mystery or crime is sort of trying to understand the internal workings of whoever my main character is. So I tend to do a really kind of immersive first person POV, and that works great for suspense, right? Because in suspense, you want the reader to know a little bit more than the main character. And by staying in a strict first person, you can really play fairly, right? In withholding information from your character. And you can really generate that kind of like visceral dread when you're in someone else's body. And so I think that's what works so well for me about suspense, is I'm really just someone who wants to like write a character, and then I don't know, all my people just happen to have murder happen around them.
I will second that. Surprisingly. No, I love writing suspense. I mean, number one, like I don't have the skill set to construct something like a cozy. I like mad props to friends here and friends that I have elsewhere who are able to create those stories, which are so entertaining, and I'm starting to get into them here recently, which has been a lot of fun. But as far as suspense goes, it's the same thing, and it's also sort of the thing that draws me to it is the honesty, right? The uncomfortable honesty, the intrusive thoughts that we all have. You know, you're sort of unfettered when it comes to characters really being, you know, people can say they're unsympathetic or unreliable or whatever other phrases that they use, but they're human beings that have, you know, feelings of jealousy, envy, rage. There's a voyeuristic component to it. You know, we don't belong in people's bedrooms or in their therapy appointments or anywhere else. And we also really, really love being the fly on the wall there. And certainly I enjoy that as an author. So I don't know, I feel like I'm liberated to be able to write characters who behave badly, even though they're really just behaving, which is fun.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great way to put it. It's a great way to put it. So I'm spurred by Barb's comment. I love that, hating the hook. Let's turn this around a little bit. So is there a genre that, other than your own, which you'd like to try writing or have thought about trying, and, you know, what has interested you about that? If you'd like to jump in on that one.
I would love to try.
Yes.
I would love to try a cozy series. I would. I love cozies. I'm a person with some like really passionate niche special interests, and it would give me such pleasure to get to info dump and into a mystery. But I'm really scared of cozies because it's such efficient storytelling. You have to be so nimble and yet so vivid, and it all has to work together. Whereas like in my sort of subgenre, I can just like have like a depressing monologue for like 5 pages but then like have someone outside the door and call it suspense. But I would love to try a cozy because I just think they're so impeccably structured, and the craft on display in cozies just always blows my mind.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to make a note of that, Liz, and ask you in a few years. So how's that cozy coming? We'll see. We'll see. I saw some nodding along with that. Who else wants to jump in? What genre?
Yeah, I was gonna jump in and said I have this fantasy story inside of me that's a jumble. I can see it clearly, but every time I sit down to write it comes out as a mess. So it hasn't actually fully formed yet. But I would love to write, you know, an epic fantasy series.
Yeah. Wonderful. I grew up reading fantasy and sci-fi, so I'm there with you. I do have ideas for a fantasy series. That I don't know when that's going to happen, but at some point. Yeah.
I tried writing it, and it's not ready yet. It's not formed yet.
Yeah.
Enough to work with.
Right.
I'm a lover of history, and I've written some nonfiction books. But my mysteries up to now have been like cold cases, like it'll be set in the present, but there's something that happened in the past but this year, my first historical is coming out, and it's quite a challenge. I mean, you are working with, you know, history and facts on all different levels, you know, so I'm just so frightened when it comes out in August, because already someone has told me, Naomi, in 1944, they did not open beers with beer tabs. You know, we were able to correct that error, but I know something else is going to happen.
Right.
I'll piggyback off that and say exactly the same thing. The historical fiction, I would give anything to be able to do that world building, to have that skill set. I have tried to write pages and they don't look great or sound great, but I am obsessed with the story of Mehmed the Conqueror and his lover, Dracula's brother, Radu, who like go on to siege Constantinople, and I want to read that story so badly. I can write it, but if someone here can.
No, we need you to write that, PJ. Oh, I'm noting you down for that one. And yeah, what about you, Esme? Any, you know, subgenres you're just dying to try to write, or maybe you have and it's, you know, a drawer novel or?
Yeah, I do write in a lot of different genres, but you know, nothing else is published, but I feel like I feel okay in the ones that I'm writing. So I haven't said anything, but like I enjoy writing women's fiction with magical realism. I've done a little bit of historical fiction, and what else? Oh yeah, a little grounded sci-fi. You know, I can really consider myself a speculative writer, so sci-fi and fiction. It just happens to be a cozy mystery. But I think probably the most challenging for me is probably sci-fi. But that's one that I kind of like, and something I'm working on something now that has some sci-fi elements. But I don't think it's enough sci-fi for the hardcore sci-fi fan, but but it has a little bit to it.
Right. I think that probably science fiction and fantasy is a lot like mystery or crime fiction in that it's a very broad umbrella, right? Yeah. And speculative fiction. Say that 5 times.
Right.
Right. It encompasses so much.
I thought a bit about speculative. I don't know if what I'm thinking about is speculative fiction, but it might be in that I've outlined in my head, again, sort of like Kia, that never quite appeared on a page, stories that would come out of my own childhood growing up on the south side of Chicago, my own experiences of having a father who was a psychologist, a community psychologist, but blending two other genres with those memoirs and making him as a fictional character into sort of an amateur sleuth, and then throwing somehow in wizards and clans of wizard-like peoples that lived on the south side of Chicago. So
that sounds cool.
Sort of and thinking that it's YA. So I'm not sure how that would sort of come out. Harry Potter meets
that sounds marketable.
Meets Raymond Chandler. I don't know, but somewhere.
Sold.
Yes.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. We're all making notes. Okay, that's Delia's.
This is a binding panel.
Yeah. we're stealing neighborhood noir.
Yeah, you got that one. Yeah. I mean, for me, I too, just to let you know that it's okay to fail too at writing something you've never tried. You know, I wrote the great Canadian novel. I tried, and it was a big steaming mess. It's I would like to reduce it to a smoking pile of ashes because it was so terrible. And that's fine, right? That's fine. We want to try new things, and sometimes it doesn't work out. So speaking of, this is a great segue for me, Delia, because I'm interested in subgenre mashups, you know, where we just like put stuff together. So we didn't hear from you in the last question, Kristen. I wonder if there's like any kind of subgenre mashups that you would love to write, or you would love to read, or you have read, or anything like that. Because the thing about crime fiction, as I said, is it's just so broad.
So I really like, it sounds like a lot of folks here write things that have paranormal elements in them, which is, I think, is really fun. I really like sort of like mysteries that have that fantasy edge or ghosts in it. I read not too long ago Magic for Liars by Sarah Gailey, which is like a private eye novel with fantasy. It's sort of like kind of like Harry Potter meets Raymond Chandler, honestly, but for adults. And it worked so well. And I think that those two elements just really came together in such a cool way. And I would love to read more along those lines. I think that's a really fun place to explore.
Right. And what about writing mashups? Do you have any aspirations or secret dreams you want to share with us?
Well, I don't know that I would make a very good fantasy writer, just because I am like so interested in making things. I'm so interested in realism that, like, as a writer, it can be hard for me to break loose of that. But I really like, you know, there's like a certain type of action movie where it's like there's some heist kind of plot, and you don't really need to, the details don't matter. All that matters is, like, you know, what's on the screen. There's a car flying into an airplane. It's fine. Like, I think it would be really to like play with that and write like sort of like mindless isn't the right word, but like write the kind of heist story that doesn't require a lot of like rigorous intellectual curiosity to enjoy.
Mission
Just,
Impossible.
you know,
Huh.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that you know, that those writers must have a blast, because you don't have to like stop and make sure it makes sense, or make sure it's possible, or make sure it works. It's just like whatever you think of, sure. Seems
Right.
fun.
Right. What about you, Kate? Great
I
history
tried
with
to do
cozies.
yeah, right. I tried to do a YA paranormal historical mashup that was not historical at all. It was a really disaster, but it was a teenage girl raised by a single mother. The father left long ago, and then when she turns 16, she finds out that her father is the king of the vampires, and she has to go live in his castle for a year. And he shows up, and she's pissed off. And then I gave the title of the book, "Hit the Road, Vlad," and it went to Scotland, and there was a cute guy in the stables, young, wearing a kilt, and it was just such a disaster. But so I gave up all of that and went to Cozy's and stayed there. The only mashup in cozy wise that I can think of is, and there are probably others, but Ellen Byron writes cozy mystery, Cajun country mysteries.
Yeah, they're good.
And I just think they're it's kind of a mashup of, it's almost Southern Gothic, it's culinary, it's hilariously funny, and there's so much food that your mouth is watering. You have to have food around while you're reading them. But that's probably not the kind of mashup you're thinking of, but I just love that one. There's good old boy police chief, but then he turns into a good, anyway, it's a great one. It kind of feels like a mashup. But
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
Too bad Ellen's not here. Shout out to Ellen Byron. I actually am really interested in going back to Hit the Road, Vlad. So, I mean, Kate, like when you think about it, what was it like that didn't work for you trying to write that? What was it that didn't quite work for
The
you trying to
whole
write
thing. I think I could get the voice of the girl, but when I started writing it, YA was getting darker and older, and the characters were into a lot more things than I realized, because I was reading YA, but I guess I was reading, you know, the old stuff, because this was my agent finally said this has got to be middle grade, because everything's just too nice, and even though it's dark and there's vampires, it was ridiculous. Nothing really worked.
Right.
And yet I love the idea of it.
Right. I don't know. I'm just thinking maybe
I'll ever go back.
Really, you could revisit. I'm just putting it out there in the universe.
I like the Scottish castle part.
Right. Maybe you can pick and choose the aspects that you want to return, or put in something new, right? So I mean, let's just thinking about different subgenres of crime fiction. So do you think that there's any specific subject matter which doesn't lend itself to your particular genre, your particular subgenre? We spoke earlier about the things that do really work, right? Food, or amateur sleuths get to poke around, or PIs get to be slightly illegal, or whatever it might be. So those are the things that work for the genres that you write in. But is there any subject matter that you've tried, it just does not work for your genre? Yeah, Barb.
So this is actually a subject I think about a lot. As Kate said, cozy mysteries are considered pure entertainment. I'm sure you guys get a lot of emails. I read this by my mother's bedside when she was dying. I read this in a chemotherapy chair. I read this when my son was in rehab. I mean, I get a lot of, I'm sure we have all gotten I read this during the pandemic emails. So I really do try to honor that. But by the same token, I don't believe in promoting murder for trivial reasons. So I don't think someone gets killed because they cut in front of you in line at the post office.
Right.
So there is often in my books an element in the backstory, usually in the backstory and usually off stage, of sexual assault or spousal abuse or addiction, because I just don't want to trivialize ultimately the dead body. And I have occasionally seen, Goodreads or Amazon reviews like, this is not a cozy. But, that's just the way it goes. So for me, it's always a balance.
But you would say there may be things, what I'm hearing is you're saying there may be things that are off limits on the page, but not necessarily.
Yeah, I'm trying to honor the escapism with which people come to the books and also the time they're giving me. And I, but I'm trying to portray people who are recognizably human in recognizably human situations.
Right.
But the only thing that is off limits to cozies is bad language, which absolutely drives me crazy, because if I saw a body, I would still be swearing at them. Please shut up.
That's a really good point.
Oh my gosh. Oh heck. Oh gosh.
Oh
They're
dear.
dead. Oh dear.
Oh crumbs. Oh crumbs. That's a personal favorite of mine. Oh crumbs. Yeah. Well, anyone else? Yeah, jump in here.
Well, I'm sort of thinking about it now because, initially my answer to this question was kind of like, well, I mean, suspense thriller, sort of anything, you can make anything work in there. But that's actually not true, because now I'm thinking about what Barbara said about audience expectations, right? Because even if you can make something fit a form, it might not successfully fit that form because your readers, and that's where I always run into problems with sort of subgenre labels, is it creates a bunch of reader expectations. And that scares me as a writer. With suspense and even more so with thriller, there is this expectation of like big twists, of like big surprises, and like that is just really not my forte. That's really hard for me. I find plotting super hard. And so yeah, I wonder if in sort of my subgenres, if it would be hard to write something that feels like I think my books are very earnest, but if I wrote something that felt like too nice, right? Like I think that wouldn't work with that label on the book. Whereas what I'm hearing from the cozy writers is sometimes you feel the opposite pressure, right? That you have to sort of like keep it a certain gentleness. Is that a good word for it? No cursing. I curse all the time. So yeah, I'm wondering, it's not so much about what you can or can't do in suspense or can or can't do in cozies. It's more like what do we owe our readers, and what do our publishers demand from us?
It's really complicated because there's a legacy of publishing and certain characters that we've seen, since the 1940s, like the lone PI, the lone white guy PI, and it's evolved so much. But I think still, in some readers' mind, there is that certain expectation, which is probably supported by the publishing house, by the corporation, so what comes first, the chicken or the egg? I know for me, I my first mystery was about an old Japanese guy, and it's more in the traditional mystery. It doesn't, people wanted to read more of a younger woman, and maybe not someone who's in between two countries. So it's hard, but is that going to stop you from doing what you want to do? I mean, I think you need to know that you may face some obstacles. Don't fool yourself. And so I think you might even have to be more stronger. You have to be stronger, to kind of forge through. But I think it's possible, if you keep working at your craft, and sometimes you're subverting expectations, and who knows, maybe you're ahead of the curve. Maybe you have something that people will want to read, like maybe, 2, 3, 5 years from now.
Yeah. And just to go back to, just of course thinking of neighborhood noir as that term, Delia, and putting that together with what Liz was saying about reader expectations, and putting that together with what you just said, Naomi, about coming from the writer's perspective, right, from craft. So, I mean, where are the lines? How do you decide for yourself as the writer? Well, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna put in a clown in my suspense novel, a clown who likes shucking oysters. I don't know. I don't know what it might be. Like,
It's unsettling.
It really is.
There's the formula. I give it to the world freely. But like,
I think it's a little easier for when I'm writing in the romantic suspense genre, because maybe it's just me, but it's harder to go from a really, really dark subject matter or a dark crime that's the underlying mystery or crime, and then pivot to a scene that's supposed to be romantic or building on their relationship. It's like, would they really be thinking about kissing each other like over this court? So you have to, at least for me, I'm like, wow, I have to think about, how does this person die? Is it going to be on the page? Did they see, this murder occur? Because if they do, that puts the characters in a totally different headspace than if they didn't see that, but they found out a week later that their friend has died or something. They spent some time lapse there. So I mean, maybe it's a little easier in that genre to mix
Right.
things up a bit, because
Right.
yeah, I don't know that people want to kind of read romance / horror together. Maybe I don't, so I don't write it. Right?
I'm sure there's some people who do, right? There's some people
There
who do
probably
write
are.
and write it well.
I don't
Yeah.
read it and I don't write it, so it makes it easy for me.
So I
That's
mean,
too far.
for Kristen and Delia, when we're talking about PIs, and so that's sort of a certain expectation too about what gets written
Mm-hmm.
of, what are the crimes that get written about. Of course, you also have amateur sleuths in cozies and traditional mysteries. So for you, writing in this subgenre, this very specific PI subgenre, how do you choose what crimes you have your characters go after? Are you going to look for that clown? I mean, or
There's guaranteed to be no clowns in my books ever.
Okay.
I would find writing about clowns to be upsetting, I think. In terms of like the actual crimes that get investigated, I think there's something like, because a private investigator can pick and choose their cases, you really have to sort of think about like, what is something that your character is going to like want to be able to figure out or want to be able to help with, because like I can see certain types of people coming to my PI character Roxanne and saying like, well, I need to figure out who's been stealing bread from my store, and I don't think Roxanne would really be like interested in figuring out who's stealing bread. There's something about, she's interested in the puzzle of something, but also correcting a certain type of injustice.
Mhm.
And so like if someone comes to her with something that doesn't actually seem like something is unfair, why would she want to get involved with that?
Mhm.
But I think that like at the same time she has to make a living, but part of the fun is that a case can start out looking like one thing and grow into something completely different. So it almost it becomes almost irrelevant where it starts, because that's just sort of like what gets the door to open. And it's really, once you open the door and go through it, then you really see what the story is about.
Right.
I agree with a lot of what Kristen just said. And I found that what's interesting for my PI Rook is that he's not the boss. And that's one way I tried to subvert the PI genre. He works in a little tiny agency. He's got two bosses, one of whom is his girlfriend. So he's the third person down in that agency. So he has to take the who stole the bread from my grocery store assignment if he wants to get paid that week. He doesn't have that option, but I think that brings him further into the community, and it gives him leads into, and of course, I think as Naomi, once you put a wonderful question on a Facebook page asking, how does one get the investigator, amateur or professional, into the case? What's the grabber that gets that person into the case? And so I always find that the critical question, and I've tried different ones in different books. It's always different for each one, but it's got to be something, to my mind, that the dead person really has to matter to the investigator, and really has to matter, therefore, to the reader. And it doesn't make sense to me if the investigator, in my case himself, doesn't actually care, that is just doing it because it's a professional assignment. That's not enough for it to make it interesting, along the lines of what Liz was saying about wanting to get inside. And it's not so much I read this somewhere recently, it's not so much how the PI works the case, it's how the case works the PI. And that's what I'm interested in finding out. So in one case, one book I had, it was a boy, a young teenager that was killed in a drive-by shooting, and it was a friend of Rook's, and he witnessed the shooting, and he got instantly involved in tracking down who had done this. Another case, it was his ex-wife who was murdered, and he's automatically invested. And I hope, therefore, that the readers who are, I hope, invested in him are automatically invested in finding out, along with him, what happened to these cases. They've got to mean something. They just can't be assigned off of a bulletin board. Your next case is X.
Right. That would be like PI by AI, just like assign it to a bot, the PI bot, right? Which is not what we're interested in, I think, as readers and writers. Maybe this is a tortured segue, but I'm doing it. So speaking, what do you think? So why do you think, because we've been talking about all these different ways that you craft your work as crime writers. So why do you think the subject of crime or justice lends itself so well to this very rich and broad, number of subgenres? Who wants to tackle that? We haven't heard anything from you in a while, PJ. Putting you on the spot.
I think, largely speaking, because it's broken. And one of them in a past life, I was an immunologist, and I kind of cut my teeth in anti-tumor vaccines for adult cancers. And one of the most powerful ways to give myself an appreciation for physiology, for cellular biology, and our bodies as humans is what happens when things go wrong. And cancer, as an adult, in most cases, is a case of the body breaking down. And you very quickly have an understanding of what pieces do what and why. And I find it's very similar, personally for me, both as a reader and writer of crime fiction. I was about to say, as a writer of all kinds of crime fiction, as a reader of all kinds of crime fiction, it helps clarify what's missing, what's wrong, what's going on at a very how society for specific characters doing this, that, or the other. Right. That's sort of what I love about it.
PJ, I'm so sorry, you froze for half a second. So we missed the very end of what you said. I'm so sorry.
You probably missed a really good point too.
No, I just, crime fiction is how stuff's broken and interrogates how stuff's broken. and it gives you an appreciation. It's in the same way comedy does. I understand a problem when comedy tackles it in a way I could not understand it reading a Wikipedia editorial, and it's the same thing for crime fiction.
Great, thank you for summarizing that. And I'm sorry I interrupted someone else who was just about to say, was it you, Barb?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think the human drive to have the world make sense and to make sense of the world is so strong. I have a 1.5-year-old granddaughter, and you can practically see the wheels turning in her head as she takes everything in and tries to figure it out. And I think as human beings, we have such a huge drive for the world to make sense, and the world doesn't make sense. So things that give us those answers and that make sense and that answer all the questions by the end are just so satisfying, because as humans, we just want that so much and so rarely get it in real life.
I agree with that. I think that the cozy mystery genre is very interesting because it's an odd mixture, you know, of cozy elements. You know, there's knitting and there's hot tea and there's, you know, fuzzy kittens and death, you know, and it's just like but it's a very popular formula. And I think, you know, you know, people want to be comforted. They want things that feel good, like a satisfying, heavy mac and cheese meal, you know, but they want I like food, obviously. I keep talking about it, but they want, you know, an edge, you know, so there's always, you know, a mystery, and there's people like things like mysteries. They like for things to be solved, and at the end of the day, they want to see justice. They want to see that things, there's a, you know, that, you know, who the bad guy gets their just desserts, you know. And I just think there's just a comfort there where people can read a story, kind of be on the edge of their seat, have a little bit of thrills, not like, you know, domestic suspense or a thriller where you're like frightened and scared, but just a very comfortable level of edginess and feeling like what's about to happen, just like, you know, slight tension, but still very comforting. And then at the end, you know, the bad guys are going to go to jail, and then, you know, the sexy cop is going to, like, you know, fall in love with the amateur sleuth who's also like a cupcake baker or whatever, you know what I mean? It's like, you know what I mean? It's like, there's a formula to it, but it's like a very comforting formula, I think, which is interesting. And it's also very fun to write.
Right. I think for all our genres, oh, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I think for all our genres, you know, there's a dead body, you know, and that's what we have in common. And how we respond, I mean, that's our mortality, right? And that represents who we are as human. And whether we are going to, you know, face it, kind of like I always use the Dia de los Muertos example, where you have these skeletons doing funny things, you know, you're almost laughing at death. And that's kind of how I see like the cozy mystery, or it could be just the pathos of death, like we see in the suspense and other forms. So, you know, we all have that dead body in common, and we're all like doing different takes on it. And I think each one brings something of value to it.
Yeah. Thank you, Naomi. Kristen, you're going to say.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with Esme about how there's something rewarding about seeing the bad guy go away in the end. And there's a novel by Jennifer Egan called Manhattan Beach, and she has this wonderful line. There's a character who has been reading a lot of detective novels, and she is describing the reason why she likes to read them, and it's something like it's the winnowing of a diffuse danger down into one specific person, because we live in like a terrifying world full of many horrible people. But in a mystery novel, you can really focus that and feel like not everything is scary. That person is scary. And I think that there's really something to that.
I like that. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm putting everyone on the spot for this question. Kate, do you have, you know, an opinion about this?
Well, for me, it's everything that everyone has said is I agree with completely. And also, in my books, I like that somebody like me has found the bad guy, solved it, faced them down, faced, you know, certain death, and has come out ahead, and also, a winner, so to speak. And I think that's appealing to at least, cozy readers, because it's an amateur sleuth, and she's working on a book in my book, and the book has clues that lead to, that solve the mystery, and that's satisfying, at least to my readers.
Yeah, and I'm sure to you as the writer, you get to create that, right? You get to create that situation.
Yeah, it's satisfying.
I'm picking on Kia next.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what Esme and PJ said. Combination of those things. We read mysteries because we want to see, justice served. I think we like the puzzle, but we know in the end, to a greater extent than in real life, the bad guy's gonna get his, the good guy's gonna, come out on top, and all will be all right with the world at the end. So at least that's what I read.
Yeah.
And that's my theory.
So do you think there's anything, does the breadth of crime fiction, the different subgenres you all represent, and many other writers out there, is that just because there's so many different kinds of readers? But we all are looking for, and they're all looking for this sense of
because,
justice.
In everything, there's sort of good and evil, right and wrong, justice, balancing of the scales, right? So you can kind of find that in any of the genres, and it's the differences are so. I mean, we were kind of hinting at it earlier. The differences are sort of what our publishers say. The differences are not necessarily what we as writers say the differences are. We might not see that as much difference as readers and marketing folks and publishers do.
Right. Delia.
Yeah. I was going to offer a slight, I don't know if it's a dissent or a slight twist. I think that some readers, and I include myself here, are not only or always or even at all interested in seeing justice done, but I do think a lot of readers are comforted to know that there are people out there, not necessarily police, people out there who are willing to step forward and take a chance and look at their little problems and recognize that my little problem, and it may be little or maybe big like a death, or maybe little like my cat was lost. I think it's comforting to know that there is a person in a Batman-like way, you could say, who can come and look after you, and vigilante. Who wants to, that yes, who's a vigilante, who's willing to do that in a society. I think there's so much doubt now in our society about what is right and what is wrong, about who represents right and who represents wrong, and who is the enforcing of those decisions. I think there's so much genuine and very valid earned doubt about those questions that it's comforting in many of our books to understand that there are people who are willing to step forward and at least grapple, not necessarily end up on the right side because there may not be a right side, but to grapple with those questions. And I think that is, for me, that's the comforting part.
Wow.
Yeah, that really resonated with me. I don't think justice is something that I've been particularly engaged with for my last two books. For me, it's less about justice than it is about truth, about this idea that because I think this comes down to my own personal psychology is sometimes I'm just like, man, there's so much stuff I'm never going to understand, like about the world, about existence, about mortality, about humanity. And in my books, it's, characters who are brave enough to fight for answers, right? And so I think, and I don't think that you can always get answers to everything either, but I think that's the myth that I'm selling is like, I would like to comfort people by suggesting that sometimes you can get you can actually solve a mystery. No, people might not go to jail. People might get away with everything, and probably do in my books, but at least you can make sense of it, because I think that's what I would love. That's my like vicarious thrill, is the sense that I can understand the world.
I
Right.
think there's something about
I agree with you.
I'll just say briefly, I think there's something about agency, that our characters have agency in these stories.
Right. And adding to that, Naomi, I think going back to what Kate, you were saying, that's feeling of satisfaction. So as Liz, you're saying, not everyone thing or everyone is brought to justice necessarily in all of, the genres we're talking about, subgenres, but there has to be a sense of satisfaction for us as the writers, but and for our readers, no matter the genre, that they feel like, oh, okay, I feel better having read that. Mostly, I mean, there are some books which work really well, where you end and you think, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what just happened, but it makes it makes me think, like, what didn't work and why, and then that brings deeper questions, right? I could talk forever with all of you. This is so amazing. I've got my timer going though, and unfortunately we do have to end at some point. But what I would like to end with is, audience members, please think about why you love the genres you love, and talk about them. But for my roundtable guest today, I would love to know if you would share what each of you are currently, what's a current or upcoming release you have, what are you currently writing, working on, or what's next for you. I'm going to go in reverse order of the screen. There's really no reverse order. I'm going to start with Delia. What's up for you now?
Well, several things. I just had published, just came out in February, as my the most recent book in my private, in my private eye series called Murder My Past. And I'm working right now on the sixth book, Murder Take Two, which I hope to have published next February. And I'm really, really excited, I have to say, that I have a short story which appeared just last week. It came out in a new edition of the Chicago Quarterly Review. Yeah. It's a short story, thank you, and it's in an anthology of Black American literature. So I was very proud to have one of mine be one of the few fictions in it. And I always say, well, it's not really a crime story in the classic sense, unless you think that a KKK parade through your neighborhood is a crime, in which case then it is a crime story.
So. Congratulations on that, Delia.
Thank you.
Naomi, let's hear what's up for you. You can tell us about this August novel.
Yeah, Clark and Division, and Delia, you know where that is, because it's an intersection in Chicago, 1944. Yes. It's coming out in August. I'm excited. I'm working on a middle grade nonfiction book, and then there's going to be a follow-up to Clark and Division. So
sounds lovely. And Liz, what's up for you?
Yes, great question. Great question.
The eternal question.
Yeah. So my most recent book came out in paperback just at the beginning of this year, and that's Pretty as a Picture. Right now I am sort of mid-process. I'm writing an original graphic novel with Alex Segura and the artist David Hahn called The Dusk, which is a sort of our like progressive take on vigilante superhero motif. And then I'm working on my next book, which is a standalone, and it's what I'm calling speculative PI. It's a PI, and yeah, the past 15 months have made me real weird. So I'm just leaning hard into that, and seeing where the impulse takes me.
So I'm so sorry that you froze for a second on my recording. So after PI, I missed all of that. So could you just repeat? It's a PI who does which?
It's a PI story set in an alternate Los Angeles.
Wonderful.
And it has, it's weird, man. But
we've talked about it. We've talked about it. Yeah.
We did. Yeah. And it just keeps getting weirder, not less weird.
Awesome. That's awesome. Thanks for that.
That's also what I want to read. I want to read everyone's, like everything I've heard today. Like every time a person has been like, oh, I've been working on this really bizarre, and I'm like, I want to read that now. So I hope everyone writes everything they've been talking about today.
Great. Thanks, Liz. Kristen, what's up for you?
I'm currently finishing up my 5th book, which is a standalone, part procedural, part suspense. It's called One of Those Girls, and it should be out next year if I can finish it. The past 15 months have also made me weirder, Liz, so I can relate to that. And less good at writing, apparently. But I'm also really excited because I have a short story that will be in America's Best Mystery and Suspense later this year. So I'm super excited for that to come out. It's like a writer dream of mine from way back. So I'm absolutely thrilled with that.
Congratulations. I'm sure we're all looking forward to that. Akia.
So my first book came out in February, a romantic suspense, Pursuit of the Truth. And so that's out now. And then in September, on September 16th, the psychological thriller / procedural, police procedural will be out. So I'm gearing up for that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Barb.
So my next book out is a Halloween novella anthology with novellas by Leslie Meyer, Lee Hollis, and me, and it's called Halloween Party Murder, and it comes out August 31st. And last Tuesday, I handed in the manuscript for the 10th main clam bake mystery, which is called Muddled Through, and will come out sometime in 2022.
That's great. Thank you. All right, Kate, we get to hear what's up next for you.
I just turned in a fixer-upper mystery. I think it's number 9. I can't keep track. It's called Absence of Malice.
Love those titles.
The one that just came out in November is Premeditated Mortar. About an insane asylum that's turned into an elegant hotel.
No. Check in and you don't check out.
The next bibliophile mystery, I think it's number 16. It's Little Black Book, and the book that she's working on in my book is Rebecca, Daphne du Maurier.
Nice.
That's out in late June.
Oh, that sounds great. I love those titles. Thanks, Kate. Esme.
Sure. So my second book, A Hex for Danger, is coming out July 13th. So excited about that. And then I am working on a new series, first book in a new series.
Oh.
Another cozy mystery.
Oh, wonderful.
It deals with, it's a contemporary mystery, but it deals with a conspiracy that starts in the Revolutionary War, and it deals with like museums and stuff.
Wow, that sounds great. And PJ, last but not least, again, I just worked out that way, honest.
I've got a book coming out in just a little over a week or under a week. I have no idea. I'm glad to hear other folks are also struggling getting words out during this, because writing an email is all I can do. I feel like on a lot of days. Working on, so that the book's Bathhouse, out June 15th. It's pitched as Gone Girl with Gaze and Grinder. And working on another, it's everything you think, whatever you're imagining. But working on another manuscript about a couple of different voyeurs fixated on the same family for entirely different reasons. And when things happen in said family, both voyeurs are left sort of wondering how and why, when they were both kind of looking for their own unscrupulous reasons.
Sounds so
great.
Yeah,
I love that.
I'm excited.
This is
I
so
see your
amazing.
cover everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, thank you. I don't have it with me.
It's in my mind.
Yeah, it's just right in the memory bank.
for you.
Like this.
I appreciate it. They did a really fabulous job with it. I love it.
This is amazing. I am so thrilled to have been in conversation with all of you, very accomplished, busy people. Thank you all
Sandra,
so
tell
much.
us about your book.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
About yours.
Yes.
Oh, me?
Yes, you.
Yeah.
There's a big
you,
thing.
you.
Whoever you are.
Well, let's see. I write, so far I've published the Lola Stark novel series, which is a 1930s era Chinese Los Angeles that has ghosts and magic. And Lola is the hard-boiled PI. She's the femme fatale who's actually the PI. And
Nice.
so that's one thing that I have. And then my next book is coming out in 2022, and it is a standalone suspense novel. So I get to play around with the first person, point of view and all that, which is not something I'd ever really done before. So that was a lot of fun. And I'm working on revisions right now for my editor. I have a June 30 deadline. So good times. But it's been like such a pleasure for me today to just be in conversation with all of you and to talk about the thing that we all love, right? Which is writing crime fiction. This is so wonderful. So thank you, PJ and Esme, Kate and Liz, Kristen, Kia, Barbara, Barb, Naomi, and Delia. Thank you so much. And I truly appreciate your openness and, your willingness to share your stories and your insights. Thanks for joining us today, friends in the audience. I hope you discovered, new and interesting things about crime fiction subgenres. And of course, you've learned about new books to add to your TBR pile, which I'm sure is teetering, but can always use more books, just like mine. So for more information about BoucherCon in New Orleans, please visit BoucherCon2021.com. Again, it takes place in August. For more information about Sisters in Crime, proud sponsor of BoucherCon, please visit sistersincrime.org. And so I do want to note that all of these wonderful authors with me here today are Sisters in Crime members. And I am so proud to call each and every one of you a Sinc sibling. So audience friends, if you haven't joined our warm and welcoming community yet, what's stopping you? I don't know. As promised, you'll find website links for our authors in a few moments, and as well as a link to the Sisters in Crime bookshop.org storefront, where you can purchase books from today's authors here online, while you also support independent bookstores across the United States. So please take care, stay safe, and happy reading. Thank you.